So welcome to the tabletop review of the JDM Shimano Scorpion BFS, and BFS stands for Bait Finesse System. Now this is an ultra finesse version of an already finesse oriented reel, the Shimano Scorpion 70. And if you've seen the previous video between the CURADO 70 and the TATULA SV, these reels can handle weights down to 1/8 of an ounce pretty easy. Now the purpose of the Scorpion is to handle weights even lower than that, down to almost 1/16 of an ounce, or around 2 grams. So with that, Shimano gave it a ultra shallow spool, and they've also given it a new braking system called the Finesse Tune Brake, or FTB. This thing will focus, there we go. FTB stands for Finesse Tune Brake, and I'm going to go over that with you in a few moments. Now, bait finesse fishing is not really big here in America. It is really big in Japan, where they have very highly pressured waters. There's a lot of fishermen there, but not a lot of places to fish for bass. So it's very pressured, and I believe a lot of their lakes are very clear, so they have to use really small baits a lot of times. And so they've developed finesse bait casters, because I guess a lot of them don't like to use spinning gear for that like we do here in America. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna weigh the spool and get some measurements. Okay, so I got my cheapo scale out. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna weigh the reels themselves. Okay, so the regular Scorpion 70 weighs in at 6.59 ounces, or almost 6.6 ounces. Now the BFS version weighs in at 5.9 ounces. So it's about half an ounce lighter, give or take, and I think that's mostly down to the lighter spool and the brake system. Now, of course, I'm going to weigh the spool, because spool weight is extremely important when it comes to bait finesse reels. You need a really light spool that's very shallow, so it does not hold a lot of line to weigh the spool down. Okay, so the spool weighs about 8.8 grams. It's not too bad. Now, while I have the spool out, I'm going to bring out two other bait finesse reels to better explain what the FTB system is. Okay, I brought out two reels here to show you guys what the advantages are of Shimano's FTB system. Now, the first reel should be no stranger to you guys. It's the DAIWA SS Air. Love this reel right here. And the next reel is the 2015 Shimano ALDEBARAN BFS XG Limited. I also love this reel. This reel is really slick. Now, the big news about Shimano's FTB system is that instead of using the normal centrifugal brakes that Shimano is known for, they opted to go with magnet brakes. And the reason they did that, I will show you guys here in a second. But here's the magnets inside the brake hub. There's 4 magnets on one side, and there's 4 more magnets on the other side. If if you can see that letter on that bottom magnet, that's a N or a Z. There's also one on this side. Those magnets you can actually remove for less braking if you want. Now the way this works is this hub moves in and out. So here's the fully extended position for maximum braking. So if I turn this dial all the way down to 1, there you go, it's retracted back into this hub here. These magnets, what they do is they interact with this non-ported strip. If you can see, there's a strip on the side where the FTB logo is that has no holes. So that is the metal that the magnets interact with. Now, the reason Shimano went with magnets is, if you can see here, the only thing you have on this spool is the spool and the spool shaft. Now with the old system, the old VBS system Shimano had, I'll pull this out for you guys. They were limited to how light the spool could be because the brake hub, or the VBS hub, is actually attached to the spool. So that increased the rotational mass and just basically limited you to how light your spool could get. Now the DAIWA system suffers the same fate because the way they set it up, the mag force, it's got the rotor or inductor that's attached onto the spool. So even though they're using really high-end aluminum, this is made a G1 duralumin, that's super light, they can only remove so much material. They still have to have this rotor attached onto the spool. So that's one of the main reasons Shimano went to this style of magnetic system, to make the spool rotational mass as light as possible. Now one thing about Shimano versus DAIWA, the DAIWA, they do not want you to use any line over 6 pounds with this, I believe, and they definitely do not want you to use braid because the spool is so thin that you could deform it, and I've actually heard reports of people deforming their spools. Shimano, actually, you can use braid because, I don't know if this will show up, there's actual ridge or rib that runs on the inside of the spool that reinforces it. And in fact, you can use braid, really light braid with this. I don't know if that rib will show up there. And there's one on this side too. Anyway, you guys are gonna have to take my word for it. There's some ribbing inside there that reinforces the spool so you can use light braid. Now, the one thing also about the FTB system is that it's a dynamic system, much like DAIWA's mag force. Let me show you what I mean by that. Now when the spool is spinning at its fastest, these magnets are actually spring loaded and they'll pop up closer to the spool depending on the spool speed. And of course they'll pop down as the spool slows down. And it happens on this side as well. See, as the screwdriver got closer, the magnets popped up. This is very similar to DAIWA's mag force, or the rotor, depending on the spool speed, will protract and retract to interact with these magnets on the side plate. So basically that's what Shimano's FTB system is. Actually, Shimano's been using magnetic brakes for a long time. They actually have a bass reel in Japan that used magnetic brakes only. It's one of their lower end models. So they're actually not strangers to magnetic systems. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to spool the Scorpion BFS and the Scorpion 70. I'm going to take them out on the field, and I'm also going to take them out actual fishing to see if there's any kind of difference in the real world between these two models. So I mean, if the Scorpion handles the really light lures better or just as well as the BFS, then you know, you kind of ask yourself what's the need. But we're gonna find out. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully I'll be able to get that out to film this weekend. I know the hurricane is kind of passing through here, so I know the creek's probably going to be washed out, but I'm going to check around. Either way, I'm going to get to it and show you guys the results. All right, guys, thanks a lot.